Well, welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar, Building Connections for Community-Driven Research and Learning Partnerships. My name is Lynn Gidluck with the Community Engagement and Research Center at the University of Regina, and I am also an enthusiastic member of the Management Committee for Community Campus Engage Canada, a volunteer role that I have learned so much from through my participation. You will see in the chat a link to the CCE Canada website so that you can learn a bit more about CCE Canada. And if you're not already a member, I really encourage you to take a few minutes to fill out the online form so you can learn about future events and join our growing community of practice and knowledge sharing network. There are also numerous ways that you can become more involved in the work of CCE Canada. So please reach out to Magda Gomans, manager of CCE Canada, for more information if that is appealing to you. Now, before we jump into things, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm joining you today from my office at the University of Regina, which is located in Treaty 4 territory, in beautiful Treaty 4 territory, where it's nice and warm and sunny today on the traditional land of the Nehewa, Anishinaabeg, Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota First Nations, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. Today's webinar arose out of a collaborative project between the University of Regina and Community Campus Engage Canada. One of the primary objectives of this research project is to assist our university in developing a campus-wide program to incorporate community engaged learning with a focus on community-driven programs for social impact and more extensively into our undergraduate courses. The project team undertook this research project to develop recommendations for such a program, and really drawing from best practices gathered from the community-based organizations and post-secondary institutions across Canada, 4 of which we have the opportunity to hear from today. And, tailoring our recommendations to the unique context and needs of the U of R. But we realized in doing this research that so many universities in Canada are at the same stage and development of our community engaged learning programs as the University of Regina. So we really are hopeful that what we're coming up with for our university will be really of interest to other universities. So we're going to put a link to the summary of the project in the chat to give you a few more details about this project. But Magda and Amber, can you just give a quick wave? These are my, the 2 members of the team that came together to do this work. So let me just briefly review how our session is going to be structured today. First, I want to give a warm welcome and big thank you to our panelists who represent community engagement offices across the country. As someone at a university where our community engaged learning is very ad hoc and not very developed, I can't begin to tell you how excited I am to be able to have our 4 guests here today to provide you with what is really just a quick teaser of the programming they do in this area. They're doing cutting edge work, and I know many of you will be as enraptured with what they have to share with us today as I am. We've come up with a series of questions that this Magda, Amber, and I, that I'm going to pose to each of the panelists. So we're just going to be doing this in kind of a roundtable format, imagining that we're all sitting in a big room, a circle together, and having a nice conversation. As weird as this Zoom world is, it is giving us that opportunity to kind of bring people from across the country. So thanks for that. I'm confident that the conversation is going to be really rich, so we likely won't have much time for me to share too much about what we've learned in our research project, but have no fear, we're planning a separate event for that, and all of you on the call today will receive an invitation to join us for that. We want to save some time for all of you to ask questions at the end, so I encourage you to submit questions in the chat as you think of them, or raise your hand during that portion of our event. And Magda's going to kind of help me monitor that so that we don't lose sight of some of those questions. So now I'm eager to have you hear from our panelists. Joining us today to answer questions about their experience in facilitating community engaged learning and community campus partnerships are Megan Turner from St. Francis Xavier University, Bruce Mogtader from the University of British Columbia, Shahad El-Sakar from Mcmaster University, and Michaela Noe from Nipissing University. In the interest of time, we'll be posting information about each of these fascinating people in the chat, along with links to their institutional websites. So here we go. Our first question, and why don't we have Megan start us off? How have you helped coordinate community engaged learning projects at your institution? And are there any community campus partnerships that you have been involved with that you're particularly proud to support? So starting with Megan.
Okay, thank you. I reached out to Magda about this because we have a long-standing program. It's in its 25th year. We provide experiential learning opportunities for over 27% of our student population. And so the answer to this question is a little bit outside of the context of local community-based learning, but I did want to share it with everyone because it's been a great learning experience for us recently because of the COVID shutdown. So we run in addition to our course-based service learning program, we also run an immersion service learning program where people go to international destinations and are immersed in a local culture. Obviously, because of COVID, we weren't able to have those running during the global pandemic. And we really felt compelled to continue our partnerships with our international partners. And so we built a course, an IDS course that is in partnership with an organization in Peru called Nexos Comunitarios, and they support people who live in the highlands of Peru who have been subjected to extreme poverty, isolation. And it's this, usually when students go on the immersion experience, they go to these communities. And what we did was we built a course where students do virtual engagement with these communities and they present information to them and there's an exchange. And students learn from, reflect about the issues and lifestyles, et cetera, of the people that they're engaging with. And then they write a research paper based on that. And as a person who came into this program 5 years ago with significant reservations about the immersion program because of equity and accessibility issues, it's a very expensive program. People who have mobility issues or don't have the capacity to travel can't do it. That we've provided an opportunity to continue to support our community partners in Peru who they base a significant amount of their income on these experiences that they send university groups on, to have a course that is now going to be, ingrained in the academic calendar for people to connect with international partners and receive course credit for it. And it's not something that they have to pay for. So our international partnerships have been difficult to maintain during this time, but we've really navigated a lot of different ways in which we could continue to support them and they would still have ongoing communication and contact with our students. My other two answers are more directly related to community-based work.
So fascinating. Thank you, Megan. I'll turn it to Bruce now.
Thanks for the question. Sorry for my internet. It's such a large university. UBC does not have a good internet connection, unfortunately. We're working on that. I wish it was something that the community engagement office here could help with, but we can't. So I'm going to get us started on answering the question. One of the projects that we're really proud of is working directly with the departments to integrate community engaged learning in their courses. And these are large renewal of curricular delivery of the courses that happen in the Faculty of Science, and it's targeting 12 courses in Earth and Ocean Sciences to transform those courses to experiential and Indigenous learning platforms and curricular revisions that require bringing those faculty who teach those courses together around the table to reimagine how they could adopt a pedagogical view and connect that to communities across British Columbia, because they will be traveling from university outside. The students will be doing trips for weeks to live with communities and learn about Indigenous ways of knowing and beings and engage in different sort of methods of learning. So that is one of the projects that just starting to take off this September, moving slowly with adopting 4 or 5 faculty members, talking to students, receiving feedback about how that might work, and then expanding that 4 or 5 courses to 6 other courses. And this is a collaboration of Center for Community Engaged Learning, Center for Teaching, Learning, and Technology, and other offices on campus that might help to scaffold this. And large funding has gone into it from the Department of Earth and Social Sciences, as well as our office and other offices on campus. So that's one of the projects that I could start with.
Wow, such lucky students at the University of British Columbia, and as well as St. FX. Those both sound like amazing programs. How about Shahad now?
Absolutely. Thanks all for the opportunity to speak a little bit about what Mcmaster does. The Office of Community Engagement helps broker these partnerships. So overall, whenever a community member or an instructor comes to us either with an ask around, this is a project that I have, or this is my class, I'm looking for community organizations, we help broker that connection with community members or organizations. And sometimes we have specific partnerships that are ongoing or new, but people are not sure how to move forward. So we help with creating those partnership agreements and talking a little bit about what that looks like. What does the follow-up look like? How do we establish goals that are similar? So we literally try to keep people on the same page. The Office of Community Engagement also runs a minor in community engagement. So within several courses in the life science, health science, social sciences, and sustainability departments. And we also work with City Lab, which is a collaboration between the City of Hamilton and the 3 post-secondary institutions in Hamilton to facilitate some projects in the community, but coming from the municipal government. So there are lots of things that we help kind of broker, specifically on cross-campus communities as well, and committees and networks. So really, we want to make sure that we're aware of what's going on. So if there are any potential areas for connection, we can help make this happen. A couple of things that we wanted to highlight today was 2 separate courses within the Faculty of Life Sciences, working with the Hamilton Urban Core Community Health Center. So one course, the Foundation in Science Communication, students completed multimedia science communication proposals targeting specific communities in Hamilton, with the objective of reaching the population with relevant information about their overall health and well-being. So really the connection with Urban Core is that they helped students scope this information and then provided some feedback towards the end. Another course is Life Sciences 303. It's an epidemiology course, and student completed a comprehensive assignment to synthesize knowledge and develop a proposal on the health-related topics to reduce the burden on the healthcare system and to improve the health of Canadians. So really, these are 2 life science examples, but we also work with, Karen over here has an integrated business course. So there are lots of different courses across and engineering that we work with over campus, just to make sure that there's some experiential learning grounded in equitable contributions as well. So we really focus on the reciprocity piece.
Well, thank you for that brief synopsis, Shahad. Now let's, our friend from North Bay and Nipissing University, Michaela.
Thanks. So right now I'm in the role of Community Service Learning Officer at Nipissing, and our program is run out of the Office of Indigenous Initiatives here. So for curricular community service learning, my role is to work with faculty to help them integrate community engaged learning components into their courses. But my main priority is community and facilitating those reciprocal relationships between the community and the university. So how I do that is just reach out we work with community partners, Indigenous organizations, social service agencies, and nonprofits. And these relationships have been ongoing long before my time in this role, which is nice to have those ongoing relationships and foster those. We also have co-curricular community service learning. So we have 2 programs that our students can be involved in, which is Badabin Youth Group and Badabin Academic Support. So Badabin is the Anishinaabe word for the point at which the light touches the earth at the break of dawn. So all about like forming new partnerships and relationships. And Badabin Youth Group is a program for Indigenous youth, an after school program that our students can volunteer with. And then Badabin Academic Support is a tutoring program for Indigenous youth in grades 3 to 8, where university students volunteer to tutor in the community. And then one campus community partnership that I had the privilege of supporting this year was between, I work a lot with the Indigenous Studies courses here, one called Land as Home and the North Bay Indigenous Friendship Center. So they're in the process of building a transitional housing for Indigenous people facing homelessness. It's called Suswin Village. Suswin means nest in Ojibwe. And the class wanted to support that initiative. So we had a local Indigenous artist and author offer her time and talent to lead a paint night. And they ran a virtual, hybrid, it was in-person and virtual paint night fundraiser event to support them. And they ended up raising like $500 and like tons of material, because we had met with the Friendship Center and they said they needed like stuff for welcome packages for inviting those people into Suswin. So yeah, it was just something I was really like honored to be a part of, and it was just very like concrete community impact, which was great to see. So that's a little bit about my role.
Oh, that sounds so interesting, Michaela. I'm going to have a separate conversation with you about that. I know people in Regina would be very interested in learning more about your kind of land to home program. Now let's turn to we know that this work is really done from the heart. All of us are doing this work because we really do believe and hope we're trying to do something that's beneficial and to the community. So, but we know there's challenges. So what do you find the most challenging in connecting community-based organizations to classroom projects, looking towards that community impact? And, how have you responded to some of these challenges? So why don't we start with Shahad this time on that one?
Absolutely. So there are a list of some of those challenges, and I'm pretty sure we're going to overlap with everyone, but I have 5 main things that we talked about amongst ourselves in the office that we wanted to highlight for you folks. One of the big challenges here is that academic timelines do not follow community timelines. We have September to April, and a lot of the times we cannot extend these courses. Or if there are some extensions, we can only do that with specific faculty or specific students that are flexible to do this work. The second really big one is that a lot of the times we find faculty members relying heavily on the same community partners. So it's kind of, we're drawing all from the same well, while there were so many folks out there that might be interested in having those partnerships, but don't know where to begin. We seem to come back to the same people over and over again, and that creates burden on the community and the staff who are supporting in community organizations or residents and neighbors. One other main thing is the honoraria for community partners or speakers in class. So there are lots of issues under honoraria, including folks who might be on, for us in Ontario Works or Ontario Disability. So honoraria can be or are actually considered income. And what does that look like for folks who are in low income? And also not having a specific compensation model that works for speakers or for research partners. One other big thing is the mismatch of expectations from community organizations or partners. A lot of the times folks expect professional level work when students are still in the learning process. And it's a conversation around, here's what we can do to support your work, and here's what the students also need to support your work. So it's going back to that reciprocity piece, and making sure that folks are on the same level of understanding and on the same page. Lastly, the other main big one that I want to highlight is the continuity and the sustainability piece. So whether you engage folks for a term or for a year, sometimes it's still a short period, and projects need more if we're scoping them correctly and need more time. So how do we engage folks in a sustainable way when we say, okay, this is the end in April and we're going to come back again in September? So what do we do? I know we talked a little bit about how do we navigate this, but the reality is navigating this requires a lot of open and honest communication, whether it's with faculty members, with community, or even with admin level at the university, and talking about project agreements and making sure that the objectives are clear, talking about capacity. So capacity for folks in community and capacity for folks in faculty, and what they can and cannot do, and what are the requirements from the student's perspective, and what are the requirements from the community's perspective. And also talking about creating some flexibility within academia. For example, the courses that I teach, we scope projects in a way that can be multi-year or multi-term, and engage students, teams of students, to continue the work. So it doesn't have to be only one team that does the project only September to January, September to April, but we can continue doing that work with a new group of students. So we create that communication with the faculty or with the community partner right up front. As for the honoraria piece, we're really still working on an equitable compensation model, and having conversations with faculties and admin and sharing some success stories, typically from UBC and UVic. I know folks at UBC and UVic have put that in their model, in their financial compensation model. So this is something that we're still working on at Mcmaster. Yeah, I think I've gone beyond my 2 to 3 minutes, so hopefully I didn't take all of that.
That's okay. You sure packed in a lot of really great information in your short time there. Let's go to Michaela this time.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, very similar to Shahad. Like, I think the most challenging thing about connecting like organizations to classroom projects is like really practical. It's communication, like having everyone on the same page about like the goal and the outcome, how it should be achieved, like what tasks are needed to be complete. And I like found it really especially hard with some students being virtual and some in person. Like group discussions are really difficult that way, and everyone's so busy. Like community organizations are busy, professors are busy, students are busy. So finding time that you can all come together for at least like an initial planning meeting is difficult, but it's necessary in ensuring that, you know, everyone knows that their roles and responsibilities in the project. And another challenge is like everyone has their own needs and their own ideas of like what would make the most community impact. So, you know, students need that learning that comes with community engaged learning. Professors need their students to learn what they have in their course goals and their syllabus, and community organizations have their own mandates and things that they need. So that's where my focus is always like community led, and like working with professors and students to ensure that, you know, they get what they need out of CSL, but that we don't lose sight of that reciprocity of like what community needs. And then one way that I've responded to some of these challenges is to like go to the courses and sit in on their like planning sessions. And sometimes they're like lectures as well, just so I have like an understanding of the course goals and things like that. Then I'm in the loop. I can answer communities questions. I can jump into support and offer advice like based on my experiences in CSL. Going back to that Suswin Village project, like we had the staff come in to speak with the class about like their goals and what they needed and what was going to be helpful. So having like students have that connection to the project. And then also the course that I worked with, the students came with their own solution of creating a Google Doc where they could just list all the tasks that needed to be done and like assign them, which worked really well in terms of like organization, especially with students being in person and online. And I've only seen community service learning done that way because I'm just new to this role. I've only been in it during the pandemic. So that was something that helped a little bit.
Wow, thanks, Michaela. Now let's turn to Bruce.
Thanks. I think a lot that has been shared already. We're still working on it, and it's the same challenges that we're facing, and my colleagues are. I thank them for actually sharing that, because it's similar. We're facing the similar challenges as they're doing. One thing that we've been doing actively on connecting community to classroom is actually changing our approach in a social impact lab framework that we have. We created an opportunity for community partners to bring something that they're wrestling with. I don't want to call it a social problem, something that they need help with, and something that university can support with and also learn from to bring those problems forward. And so, as Shahab mentioned, we are sort of a broker, but the community is actually approaching the university and say, this is what we're kind of dealing with, what we need help with. And then we reach out to faculty, and instead of faculty designing their courses and then embedding them into a community, we're going with the community's problem, and then we're scoping out courses in which those problems could be addressed. So this is a social impact lab framework that I work directly with 4 faculty members to embed those social issues that community bring forward and explore the ways that a student project could be developed. So it's a little bit of a reverse approach than what we have usually here at UBC. So we're trying that at least this year, and we'll be happy to kind of share results on that when we find out more about it. But it's something that we found, let's try something new and see if it's works. So we're in the first year of trying our social impact lab, and we're starting again small with 4 courses and see how that's manageable. So thought to share that.
Well, thank you, Bruce. I know everyone who's on this call today is going to be reaching out to you about that. That sounds just fascinating, and we're going to be watching with a lot of interest in how that goes. Now, Megan, can you add anything to what your colleagues already said?
A little bit. I would echo what Bruce is saying, in that our program is exclusively community driven. So we meet with all of our community partners over the summer months and say, what do you want? What do you need? And then we approach faculty to have things aligned with their learning goals in that capacity. Otherwise, I mean, Antigonish is very small. If it was the other way around, where faculty were, or, you know, we were designing projects or placements and then applying it to the community, there's no way that we would have the continuity that we have now. So it's an interesting model, and it's, I mean, I know our program wouldn't be successful if it wasn't community driven. So 2 problems that we face, in addition to all of the ones that everyone else talked about, I'll talk about the ones that no one else talked about, was that with our service learning experiences, they're done outside of class time, and they're not paid. And the premise is that the students have the initiative and the desire to contribute to community, but then it also creates an issue of equity. For example, students who work full-time jobs and don't have the extra time to be able to do a service learning placement, what does that mean for them? So we grapple with that quite a bit, and perhaps the solution, and we've talked about it, is expanding the service learning umbrella to encapsulate work integrated learning placements, et cetera. And the co-op office and career office does do that here. So there's a bit of overlap, but that's definitely an issue. And then another is a very small percentage of the student population, but it happens every year and it's consistent year over year, is, students they decide to participate in our program, and then they decide they don't want to do it anymore, they don't show up, or they don't engage appropriately. And so we've created in our program a tiered placement process, where first year students do participate in one-time events to have an introduction to community and to get their feet wet. And then second and third year, they do direct service placements. And then third and fourth year, they do consulting or research-based projects. And this is an opportunity for students to showcase their skill set, but then also to slowly integrate them into community. In addition to that, we have structured orientations for all of our students that they have to participate in before participating in our service learning program. And we employ student leaders, 3 throughout the academic year, to follow all of our students, over 1,200 students a year. All of our students and all of our community partners, they connect with them 3 to 4 times a term. to make sure that students are attending and that the community partner is happy. And if they're not, then we have like a zero tolerance policy where we pull them out and then we liaise with faculty and say, you can give them a 0 for a grade, depending on the circumstances, or you can provide them with an alternate assignment. So we have like a fairly structured, or it's very structured, and the students, if they want to participate in our program in the future, have to have an appointment with myself or either the community support coordinator to articulate what they learned from the experience and to explain why that's not going to happen again. And so it's a very small, and we do that because if there's a damaged relationship, that person isn't going to want to participate in our program anymore. And it's another, another relationship building component in that we talk to our community partners and say, they're like, oh, I don't want to, connect with the office and say the students, not coming to the placement because I don't want to get them in trouble. And I say to them, this is the opportunity for them to fail successfully. It's as opposed to them getting out into the real world, quote unquote, and starting a job and deciding that they don't feel like going in that day. You need to learn these valuable lessons while you're in the comfort of like our programming. And so we support them to the best of our ability, but also at the same time, there are repercussions for behaviors, and our community partner relationships are extremely important, and we need to maintain them with integrity.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Megan. And that's certainly one of the things we learned through the research that we've been doing for our project, is that this laddered approach to community engagement is the ideal way to go, and that St. FX, you guys are doing it right. So don't be surprised if you get calls from people in our new office of experiential and service learning when they open in September, because we've definitely been bragging about you guys and the work that you are doing. Now, on to that note, our final question that I'll pose to our group here is, for offices that maybe not quite as far along in the development of our offices, what kind of advice do you have to kind of inspire community-driven research and learning partnerships with post-secondary institutions? What do you think we should do first? Like what? Just some good general advice. Why don't we start with Bruce this time?
Thanks for that question. One of the works that so one thing about me, I transitioned from the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Technology, where I was helping faculty in professional development, to Center for Community Engagement just last year. One of the areas that I've been working in was the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. And so engaging faculty to actually evaluate how their teaching is impacting its students and community through the lens of the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, and helping them in processes and procedures in which that they could advance their own publication and presentation to conferences, and also distribute that knowledge that they learn from their evaluation tools that we're giving them here to do curricular revision within their own departments, share that work with their colleagues that they're not teaching community engagement, to show how students are learning in their own discipline. We find faculty agencies is an important thing to actually invest in this work, because if they feel like they have control over what they're doing and they're advancing their own educational leadership, the investment of their time will increase. They will foster their relationship with community, given that they will see that this is something that is ongoing for the next 4 or 5 years, or maybe even longer, that I should continuously come back because I have given something to the community, and they're giving back to my classroom, to my students, and to university. They will foster those relationships. And then they're also talking to other people about it regularly. This is something that the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning will allow them to do, because they really feel like they're advancing the research in this area, and they're distributing that knowledge within the public domain. They're engaging in those conversations that will receive feedback from other people, because we feel like a lot of faculty work in solitary, when they do community engagement. They work directly with the community, but they don't have opportunities to go to conferences, given how intensive community engaged learning design is for them, right? So providing funding, providing opportunity, and also building relationship on campus with other offices, so we could educate other people about the value of the pedagogy. So really trying to establish those relationships and fostering those relationships within university and with faculty to take ownership of the pedagogy and see long-term impact of itself under a scholarship as researchers. So that scholarship of teaching and learning is one connection that we're actually advancing here, helping them to evaluate, disseminate their teaching across disciplines. So that's one thing that we've been doing, and I'll be happy to share more.
Bruce, thank you for bringing that up. That's such an important point. We certainly found that through a lot of the interviews that we did across the country, and that issue of making this kind of work seem to move it beyond being looking like it's service, that this is an important pedagogy, and helping to elevate that and create that community within the larger university, because we certainly see that at our university, where there's all these silos, really amazing individuals in every faculty doing this work, but they don't even know that other people are doing it. They're doing it because they believe strongly in what it's doing. So the work that you're doing is very important. And wow, is the Office of Community Engagement ever lucky to have someone like you who understands that, working with them. Megan, let's give you a chance to share your advice.
So I would echo again what Bruce has said about supporting faculty. It's all, all larger institutions. I mean, ours is fairly small, but they also have silos, and people work within their own sort of frameworks. And we fairly regularly have open sessions, lunch and learns, to engage people who are already doing it or are interested in doing it, to say, this is what we can do to support you. It's not to take away, anything from you. It's to support and to lift some of the burden of, community engagement for multiple projects, et cetera. And, you can have access to the community partners that we have as well, and to support them in terms of, if they're a new faculty, to build a syllabus to integrate experiential learning into that, and then to support assignment building and reflection. But then also equally as important is the relationships with community partners. In the summer months, we spend all summer having meetings with our community partners to talk about what was good and what was bad about the previous experiences, what they're looking for. And then also just to reiterate, expectations, things that are happening at the university, and to make sure that there is an open line of communication for them, so that they know that they can reach out to us at any given time. And then the most important piece of advice that I would have would be to start small and build on your successes, to get your core group of community partners and faculty that are interested, get things running smoothly, get your procedures in place, and build on your successes.
Great. That's probably the best piece of advice I've gotten all day, Megan, in terms of starting small and not, we see all these wonderful programs out there, but picking the one thing that we might be able to start and do well. Shahad.
Thank you. I agree with Bruce and Megan, echo all of the sentiments and ideas that they've shared. It's really important to work with a community partner at the beginning who you have a very strong relationship with. So if things go bad, you can still not totally mess up that relationship. And take it as an opportunity for learning with each other at the beginning, and constant reflection. For us, what's really important is to build that relationship not only with faculty, but with community members sometimes as well. and community organizations. So we cast the net really wide and sometimes just have conversations around what's available. So we have it in our repository of here's all of the information that we know so we can create those connections down the line. So even if there's nothing happening right at the moment with this group or with this faculty member, it's here are all the possibilities that could be available for you in the future. So planting the seed, and sometimes that takes time. So being patient as we plant the seed. But we also make sure that any of our resources are available for both instructors and faculty members. So creating some things that are easy to read, resources, toolkits, press books, videos that are available on your websites, but also making sure that folks know who to reach out to so that the contact people are always available. Currently, one of my colleagues, Rachel Roy, who's on the call, is doing a little roadshow of what a knowledge broker or partnership broker is around campus. So people can know, if they don't know, that this is a position that's available that can help support these partnerships. The other really important thing is incorporating CE teaching and learning into the tenure and promotion process where possible. So it gives that little extra incentive for faculty. We know that community engagement is the hot topic now. Folks want to do it, but we also want to make sure that it's done properly and not harming community. So embedding this work into the principles of community engagement that your institution has, or if they don't have, then looking at what those principles would look like and making sure that those are communicated and how can they be communicated in a proper way. And also just continuous open and honest communication. Community engagement and community engaged learning and research doesn't look like one thing. It's many different things, and you don't have to do it all. You can take pieces from it that work for your course or pieces of it that can benefit the community, but just making sure that you're doing it in a way that's thoughtful. I think that's the really important piece.
Thank you, Shahad. For those of you that haven't seen Mcmaster's Principles of Community Engagement, maybe you can post those in the chat, Shahad. I just remember the first time that I saw them. I mean, I guess I'm a little bit of a nerd, but when I saw them, I was just doing a little happy dance, and I'm going, this is exactly what we're trying to push, through the University of Regina. So, no sense reinventing the wheel. If you're interested in community-driven partnerships and engaged learning, Mcmaster has come up with something that I think is really quite exciting. Finally, last but not least on this, advice from Michaela.
Thanks. Yeah, just like seems everyone said, my biggest focus in this role has just been on like building relationships and having that as the basis of community engagement. So like often I'm just like meeting for like tea and coffee with people in the community, going to where they are and just like visiting before we even talk about community engagement. And if there is an opportunity, great. If there's not, then I just say, let me know if there's something I can help with through the year. Like often community partners, like they're like, well, we don't really have like anything going on right now, but can you share this out to students? Can you connect me with this person? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Like what other ways can I do that, that work? And also like, just like attending community events, like bringing my family and friends to them. Cause just to support the community organizations, because I'm like a part of this community outside of my role as a community service learning officer. So that's just really important to me. Megan was talking about that like reflection piece, and Shahad, like so we have like after everything's said and done, if the students are gone home, wherever home is, for the summer, we always like sit down with community partners and like reflect, and we bring like a gift. This year we did maple syrup and little like soap bars that we got from a local Indigenous store here, just to like show our like appreciation to them for hosting. Because I like before this role, I was in the community service learning course, and then I supervised students in the community, and then now in this role. So I can empathize with how difficult it can be sometimes and how much work it is to supervise students and to work alongside students. So offering gifts. But yeah, maybe instead of advice, I can offer a resource that I found helpful and that I've learned from. One of the first like guiding documents I read when I started comes from the University of Manitoba's Community Engaged Learning Office, called Working in Good Ways, a framework and resources for Indigenous community engagement. And there's a practitioner workbook, and it just talks all about like relationships and reciprocity. Two of the biggest things that I've kind of have guided my work in this office. So yeah, that's just a resource that I like, and yeah, looking forward to looking at Mcmaster's principles as well. But yeah, and I just really appreciate the opportunity to come to meetings like this and to learn more, and yeah, appreciate being invited and in on the call conversation and the knowledge that I've picked up from all of you. So yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you for that, Michaela, and and also for pointing out that resource from the University of Manitoba, because they definitely are doing some really interesting work with communities as well. And that point about just having tea with people and getting to know them in that relationship building, and how we manage in our busy world, and it seems to be at these universities that it's even more frantic all the time, to convince people that that time is well spent, is necessary and well worth the time, right? That we can't do this work right without taking the time to build those relationships and maintain them. So wow, so much rich information here. Let's see what's in the chat here in terms of questions. Magda, do you see any? Okay, let's start with Rihanna, who is at the UVic CEL office. And they're interested in building a community engagement certificate in social sciences. So how did you structure the minor in terms of interdisciplinarity? Who teaches? Just provide us a little bit of information about that program if you can.
So I can talk a little bit about what I know of the minor, but I know my other colleagues have more information. So feel free to jump in if they're on the call, but if not, we're happy to connect with you, Rihanna, and connect them with you. So the minor works with several courses across different faculties. And really, I think it started, I don't remember when it started, very long time ago. But we have a few courses that are community engagement courses, and specific courses that are from the Faculty of Sustainability, Health Sciences, and Life Sciences, and they all put together students declare minors about the end. Oh, Karen is there. She's saying 6 years ago. Karen, maybe you have more, you're more apt to answer this question. You're muted.
Oh, I
there
can
you go.
If you want. So we follow a model that is similar to the way that other interdisciplinary minors at Mcmaster function. So we own a small number of classes. I think it's 6 or 7 at this point that have a CMTY ENGA, as awkward as it could possibly be, course code. And so our minor students take those courses, and then we run coordinated lists which connect with faculties across campus. And there are over 100 courses on that list now. Counting up units and what makes a minor, it's a bit complicated, but basically it's 8 courses. 8 half-year courses constitutes a minor. Structurally, our office operates a bit weirdly in that we are both a central service unit doing the kinds of training and outreach and brokering stuff that Shahad was talking about, but we also administer an academic program, and that makes us kind of an odd fish in the university. Our courses live inside the Faculty of Social Sciences. They administer for us, and we are both within and standing somewhat outside of their budget model, but basically we're expected to pay for ourselves. So many of our courses are they're either taught by sessional faculty or they're taught by some of whom actually also work in our office, or they are taught by tenure stream faculty, but then we end up sort of paying those departments back for their time. But we more or less pay for ourselves in a circle like that. And then we have an education programmer, education manager in our office, Jay, who's on the call here. He's currently our acting manager, but was for several years our education manager. We're hiring a new education manager very soon. And so that stuff runs through me. I'm the co-director for teaching and learning in the office and through the education manager. So hopefully that gives you a start.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Rihanna, for asking that question, because that's certainly an area that the University of Regina is kind of looking at. And I see Amber, our academic director, kind of looking and nodding vigorously as you were speaking, Karen and Shahad. So thank you for that. Julie has some questions that she's posing to Bruce. Julie, do you want to just come on the line and briefly explain what you're asking, or would you like me?
Hi.
Go ahead.
Hi. No, it just I was interested in the model that Bruce was talking about and taken caught my interest a lot, because I think we also have talked a lot about this sort of community driving projects rather than the other way around. And I was curious, because we're trying to play around with that model of like how you find matching these timelines, because that's often one of the most difficult things, where the community organizations may identify a particular priority or need or project that where the university could come in, and then finding the faculty member and then going through the whole process of getting them to kind of create their course. And I often find that the timelines don't line up. Like the faculty might need lots and lots of time to rethink and rejig or propose courses, and the nimbleness of the university or the lack thereof can really cause a disruption between the two. And so I was just kind of curious how that's been working out on your side.
Thanks for that question, Julie. We have done it like both ways. So when we do a call out, we do a call out to the instructors from different disciplines to say, this is happening, this is what is going on, this is the model that we're adopting. And within departments, we get responses from faculty that are interested to revise their curriculum. There's, of course, funding involved and resources provided to them. So the program is incentivized from both directions. And then similarly, when we reach out to the community and say, this is the framework we're adopting, we're looking to include social issues into that you're grappling with into the courses across discipline. And this will happen for the academic year. Mostly because the delivery of the courses usually happen between September to the end of April. So that time frame is communicated to them in advance, so they know what they're dealing with. And then we give them examples when they reach out of what could project scoping look like. So these are the samples that we previously had. So a lot of guidance happens in both ways to ensure that this happens. So we look at the disciplinary outcome of the courses, for example, and see where those matches could be made. So we're really a matchmaker in between the faculty and the community, and also, as my colleague were mentioning, embedding the principles of community engagement if those are not. So we go to the classroom, we orient the students into these processes. We have a curriculum design for Social Impact Lab that we try to embed into those courses to make it seamless. It's not just the community engagement and then the curricular learning that you're dealing with. So there's a whole bunch of effort that has gone into it. And again, that's why we started small, 4 or 5 courses this year, and see how that works. But yes, you're absolutely right. The timeline seems to be an issue. And sometimes we get calls and the projects are so big and we say, can we cut it down in maybe 2-3 parts and we could work through this in different sort of scoping. So it's been case by case, really. Like a course in education, for example, the course on evaluation, when they became interested to do it, there was a partner that had reached out and they needed evaluation about how their programs are working. So a lot of matching that happens.
Well, thank you for that insightful answer to that question, Bruce. Just going through our chat box to see if we have any further questions. I'm noticing that we have Joe from all the way from Scotland joining us today. That maybe we can convince Magda at some point in time to do an international version of something like this, where we bring. I'm sure that we could all learn so much from our international people on how to amp up our game when it comes to community engaged learning. But are there any other questions that I don't see any other in the chat box, but I just open the floor to anyone that might want to pose some last minute questions?
I have a question that I've received, and I can pass it along if you like, Lynn.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I have a question that I received by email asking to all of you, have you ever encountered any contexts where partnerships might not be appropriate?
I can speak to that. Yeah, the only time like I've encountered that is if the like community partner is telling me like, oh, we're like changing leadership right now, we're like reconfiguring our service structure, those kinds of things, because yeah, we just don't want to be pushing, you know, I have so many students I need to place, but that doesn't mean I'm going to just push them into community where it's not right. So that's kind of a couple of things that I've encountered. If there's like changes in leadership, COVID was a big one. Places where like we're not gonna take students this year just for safety reasons, those kinds of things.
What I've personally encountered in my classes and some of my thesis students is that sometimes community partners want to continue something for the fear that it'll affect the students' grades. If this is a co-curricular or curricular related. So sometimes when they want to stop, but they have this concern for the student who provided so much of their time and effort to them. So that's when I kind of step in and say, look, it's okay. They are not going to lose any grades. We can put a pause in this if it doesn't work, and do something different. So it's been these are some interesting conversations to see how community really appreciates the students' work, but maybe don't have the background information of what that can look like in the academic setting, or how sometimes faculty can change some of those things for the student, or alter some of those assignments or percentages. So that's one thing that I can think of at the top of my head.
In our cases, we do, again, a lot of conversation whether the projects themselves are appropriate for students. Like given the first year students might not have the skills to do intensive research with community. So managing those projects has been something that we continuously go back. What would the students work in the community look like? And what are the areas that the university can actually contribute rather than just withdraw assets from the community for the sake of teaching? So there's been a lot of conversation of what is helpful here for the community and not just for the students. So those are regular conversations that we continuously go back to in making sure that the projects are actually appropriate and the partnerships are appropriate in a way that the match is, there's a sense of reciprocity involved, again, as it was mentioned. So yes, those are our everyday work.
Well, I think that's bringing us very close to the end of our webinar. I can't believe you guys are amazing in terms of keeping your answers very short and succinct. I don't think I've ever seen that before. So 3 cheers to you for all doing that and packing so much really great information into short, pithy answers. That's something that I haven't learned the art of. So I'm very, very impressed. And I may even look back and listen to this webinar again to get some pointers on that. We don't really have lots of time to kind of share results of our study, but you know, a couple big things that we heard in our interviews across the country is that our institutions need to provide some support, to provide the amazing kind of staff like the 4 of you that are doing this great work, that it can't just be the side of the desk work of individual faculty, but there needs to be some institutional support. And there seems to be a consensus that there be some kind of centralized office that works as doing that matchmaking and relationship managing work, right? And that the point about reciprocity, which you've all mentioned so many times, and that is something that we do not want to lose sight of as the U of R moves forward, is that the community-driven principle, right? And with that, I think I'm going to just say, please, if you haven't already got a membership in CCE Canada, please do, and so that you can be notified of upcoming events. And Magda, Amber, and I are fast and furiously trying to wrap up this project. There's just so much amazing data that we've collected and best practices. I look forward to having you all back. Hopefully a lot of you, I'm not going to put a timeline on because we haven't made any one of our timelines that we've given to people recently, but soon we're getting there. So with that, have a wonderful day, and thanks again to these amazing panelists. I feel inspired, as I know most of the other people on this call will be, that we've all got some food for thought, some great information shared in the chat and throughout this call, and look forward to seeing you and hopefully meeting you in person someday.